Hey everyone, I'm Brad and this is Watch Rate Heart, and it's Friday, which means it's time for the watch list. It's where I discuss the movies I've watched and my feelings about them. And this week, it's time for films about courtrooms, cops, robbers, and organized crime. And we are talking all about films that deal with law and crime. We have 4 films to discuss, including films that have become stone cold classics. So let's end this intro and get started with the reviews. Let's start with a film about surveillance and resistance. It's the 2006 German thriller, The Lives of Others, directed by Florian Henrik von Donnersmarck. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.3 out of 5, which makes it ranked 169 in Letterboxd's top 250 feature films. It has an IMDb score of 8.4 out of 10, which makes it ranked number 61 in IMDb's top 250 films. It has Rotten Tomatoes of 92% fresh and a Metacritic of 89. As for accolades, it's got a lot of them. It won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. It's on the New York Times list for Best Films of the 21st Century, ranked number 48. It's on the BBC's Best Films of the 21st Century list, ranked number 32. It's on the Writers Guild of America's 101 Greatest Screenplays of the 21st Century so far, ranked number 52. And it's featured in the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die by Stephen J. Schneider. First, I want to say right off the bat, all the things I've heard about The Lives of Others, all the great things I've heard about it are true. This is a really good movie. I will say, though, it wasn't as tense as I was expecting it to be. It's more of a morality play. I would say it's more like a mix of a Le Carré spy story and a resistance story, but I think it's incredibly effective. First, the film subverts the paranoia thriller that you get in films like The Conversation, where you play the person that is spying on others. Well, in The Conversation, you also are in the eyes of someone who spies on others, so I guess that's a bad example. There's definitely a difference in this movie because the paranoia is justified, even though the characters in the film that being spied on aren't necessarily aware they're being spied on, but they definitely feel the boot heel of something that's oppressing them. It's actually incredibly effective. And speaking of that, the film then goes from a paranoia thriller to a more dramatic film about resistance and being subjugated. And I think that turnabout that the film happens and then it goes back and forth from there is incredibly well done. I do have to say this film is more of a slow burner, and it didn't really overwhelm me emotionally or really hit into me until after the film ended. I watched it and I was like, this is a really good film. I don't know if it's great or amazing, but it's really good. And then I took my time formulating my review, and then I really started to appreciate a lot of what the film was doing. It's a movie that does a lot of subtle things that you'll pick up on maybe after you've watched it and you really think about it. It's definitely a film that I understand why people adore this film. I think it's great, to be absolutely honest with you. I'm not on the same wavelength as a lot of people who think it's one of the best out there, but I still think it's a very good movie. So overall, I give The Lives of Others 4 stars out of 5. I'm purposely being coy about the film and how I feel about it because I think the less that you know about it, the better it is for you. It's still a fantastic movie. It's a great mix of a Le Carré spy story and a resistance story. I think the way that it subverts expectations on the plot is really good, and it's a slow burner. So if you don't really get into it at first, you might find yourself really appreciating it at the end. I would still say give this movie a chance. I think it's great. So overall, 4 stars out of 5 with a heart for me for The Lives of Others. Now, in every episode of the watch list, I not only give you my opinions on movies, I give you the opinions of the people in the Letterboxd community. Let's start with Wakoshi. Wakoshi gives it 4 stars out of 5. And Wakoshi says, seeing the impact of a single person using empathy in such a dark system is truly hopeful. No matter how hopeless the situation appears, we must never forget that there is always a way out. And I think that's one of the key things about this movie that I ended up really liking. Even though I'm a little suspect as to why the person did what he did, I do know why. And we'll get to that in another review, but I definitely found the strange sense of hope in the film in such an oppressive place was actually very effective. So I agree with Wakoshi there. Let's get into the next review. This one's from Chea. Chea gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Chea says, quietly powerful and deeply human, surveillance has never felt this heartbreaking. An Ulrich Mohe is phenomenal. That's the guy who plays the main surveillance guy. Yeah, he is really good. A lot of very subtle facial expressions. His performance is very quiet, very subdued, but you do end up believing what he does, even though he doesn't really show it on his face all that much. It is a very good performance. Get to the next review. This one is from Tom. Tom gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Tom says, a true believer finds himself inadvertently re-radicalized. The last reel really messed me up. Too bad about that freeze frame, though. Was he re-radicalized? I don't know. What I got out of this film is that the main character, who is the person surveilling this couple, only helped them only because he figured out why he was surveilling these people and was disgusted by it, and he wanted to screw over the minister who was surveillancing them. I don't think that he became an unbeliever of socialism. I think what it is that he felt like he was an inferior socialist and then decided to screw him over by helping them, essentially. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I'm reading too much into it, but to me, if he was not a true believer anymore, I don't think he would be doing what he was doing at the end of the film, which was still working for the government. I mean, you could still work for the government and not believe in it, so okay, I'm not sure, but I don't think that he decided to not believe in socialism or the government anymore. I think he just felt that the person that was over him was a scumbag and deserved to be knocked down a peg or two. I think that's what happened. And finally, we have a review from Professor Dorkman. Professor Dorkman gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And Professor Dorkman says, tightly woven script with excellent performances from all, especially Ulrich Mohe and Sebastian Koch. I agree, I think Sebastian Koch is really good in this film. A film depicting a surveillance state may be filled with cliches. Hell, it's been parodied to death for decades at this point. The Lives of Others conveys the story from a more subtle angle than others may have taken it. Marvelous job. Is this film filled with cliches? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I haven't seen enough of these surveillance state films, but I do agree the subtleness of this film is what makes it so good. But I do think the performances of all 3 main actors are really good. I actually really like the female in this film, the main actress who has top billing. I don't have her name up, I should, but I think her performance was really good as well, so I want to highlight that. So in review, I think this is a great mix of a Le Carré and resistance story, and I think the way that the film subverts the expectations of what you think the film is going to be is the highlight. Not only that it's a paranoid thriller, even though you're part of the perspective of the person that is surveilling, but you're also seeing the dramatic story of the people being subjugated and getting radicalized and changed. It's a slow burn of a film, it's a subtle film, but it's definitely worth your time. A definite 4 stars out of 5 for me for the film with a heart. Great movie, The Lives of Others. The less you know about it, the better. Next is the 2011 family and legal drama from Iran, A Separation, directed by Asghar Farhadi. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.4 out of 5, which makes it ranked number 88 in Letterboxd's top 250 feature films. It has an IMDb score of 8.3 out of 10, which makes it ranked 113 out of IMDb's top 250 films. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 99% fresh and a Metacritic score of 95. As for accolades, it won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. It was also nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. It's on the New York Times list of Best Films of the 21st Century, ranked number 33. It's on the list of BBC's Best Films of the 21st Century, ranked number 9. It's on the Writers Guild of America's 101 Best Screenplays of the 21st Century, ranked number 66. It's on IndieWire's Best Films of the 2010s, ranked number 45. And it's featured in the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die by Stephen J. Schneider. When I do my reviews, I try not to use hyperbole much, because when I read a review, whether it's on Letterboxd or even a professional reviewer, when I see hyperbole used often, it's usually in place because it really means that someone's not going to explain exactly why they feel the way they feel about a movie. You know those types of reviews that you see online or you see in advertisements, it will blow you away, you know, those ones. I hate using them. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to use hyperbole right now for A Separation, because to me, this might be one of the best written films I have ever seen. I am actually stunned by how good the screenplay was in this film. I love how the film slowly builds and builds upon its story and upon itself throughout the entire film. If you've read the synopsis of the film, it's about a couple who has to separate for 2 different reasons. I will leave it there, but you can actually make a decent story out of that. You can make a good, I would say, 90 to 105 5-minute film just based on that alone. But the film goes deeper and deeper and expands more and more as the film goes on, and it offers a lot of really thoughtful and engaging and really interesting dynamics that goes on throughout the entire film, whether it's dealing with the politics of Iran or how religion is looked upon in the country as well. It does a lot of very interesting and fascinating things that I was really not expecting. This film is also very well directed. It's got a lot of great, thoughtful visual allegories and a lot of really well shot scenes. There's a lot visually in this film that is really good. You may not see it when you look at like the trailer of the film or when you see photos of how really well directed the film is, but there's a purposeful intention to the way that the director actually shoots these scenes, and he does it so well. Honestly, I'm thinking about it now, and there are certain scenes in the film that the way that it was shot, it was actually really interesting that I did not catch, that I am thinking back on, that I'm catching now, especially the very final scene and how that ended. I think that was actually really good. Characters have a lot of depth, but the screenplay has great amounts of hidden details in the film as well. I like how the film doesn't spoon-feed those details, or it remains subtle enough where if you're paying attention, you'll pick up on it maybe before it actually unravels to that point. But these characters, all of them are so well realized and just given a great amount of depth. It's really good. And the ending is so well done. Like, the ending is really good. I'm actually struggling to find something to complain about with this film, and I can't, because everything in this film just works so well. Now, this is a slow burn movie, so if you're looking for it to be engaging right away, you may have that issue to deal with. If you're into movies that will make you think, that will have you question things, but if you're into movies that make you think and challenge the way you feel about things, A Separation is a brilliant movie. And if you are into those types of movies, you probably have already seen it, but if you haven't, you very much should. I waited too long to see this. This was a fantastic movie. Well, there's only one rating to give a first watch of something like this, so I'm giving it A Separation 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. Amazing movie. The screenplay of this film is phenomenal. It is gotta be one of the best I have ever seen in a movie. Period. Just the way that everything builds upon itself, whether it's the story or how the characters give in more and more detail as the film goes on, and how everything just has so much depth and color to it. And the direction is very well done, too. Again, I'm thinking about scenes in the film that I wasn't really paying attention to the direction, but thinking back on it is quite brilliant. And the ending, oh my god, the ending is so good. It's an amazing movie. So overall, 4.5 stars out of 5 for me. For A Separation. If you haven't watched it, you really should. Check it out if you ever get a chance. Now, let's get into the Letterboxd reviews. This one is from Cinema Void. Cinema Void gives it 5 stars out of 5, and Cinema Void says, a movie that keeps expanding. A gradual unfolding of complex relationships, ethical dilemmas, and human emotions. It's like one of those compromised wipes that blossom when you drop them in water. Or tears. I agree with everything Cinema Void's saying here. I think the ethical dilemmas that the main character gets into, or all the characters get into, is probably one of the best things about this film. It is so thoughtfully done and so beautifully executed. Oh man, I can go on. Let's move forward. This next review is from Jack. Jack gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And Jack says, Asghar Farhadi's A Separation is an utterly brilliant examination of marital dynamics and class struggles, all set behind the backdrop of an enthralling legal drama. It's a true masterclass in using restraint as further means to build suspense. A film that, through all the morally complex dilemmas and expertly staged moments of drama, shows there's no need for intricate nonlinear storytelling or bombastic set pieces to heighten an enthralling narrative. Absolutely. If you look at the film like in a trailer or on photos, it doesn't look like much. But the way that it unfurls itself and how it's very deliberate, it is what makes the direction perfect. All you really need is an expertly conceived screenplay with stakes that audiences can deeply connect with, and Farhadi nails this with ease. What a film. Absolutely agree with Jack on every point he's saying here. Now, I tried to be even and get a negative review in here, or something that was a little more critical. And this is the best one I could find. This one is from Quiet Profanity. Quiet Profanity gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart. The rest of my friends list is all 4.5 stars. I'm not kidding you. It's crazy. And Quiet Profanity says, this movie is like a thriller, except the thrills are all good intentions, poisoned by bad decisions, that all wind down to a bummer portrait of human societal misery. And finally, this last review is from Desalwins. Desalwins gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And Desalwins says, I'm dumb for putting this off for so long. This is one hell of a screenplay. I am right there with you. I feel incredibly stupid for putting this off as long as I did. And I am so glad I watched it now. But I really feel like I should have watched it a long time ago. I've heard how great this movie is. And I don't know why I just kept holding off, but I'm glad I finally watched The Separation. A brilliant movie. What more is there to say other than this is probably one of the best stories I have seen in a movie in quite a long time. I love how the whole film unfurls and builds slowly and slowly as it goes on, but it doesn't not only with the story, but with the characters as well. I also think the direction is really well done. It's got a lot of good visual allegories and a lot of interesting ways that the scenes are shot, and that ending is incredibly well done. An easy 4.5 out of 5 stars for me for A Separation. Again, if you have not experienced this film yet, do yourself a favor. Rent it for $4 and watch it. You'll be glad you did. But odds are, if you're watching this, you probably already have, and asking yourself, Brad, why did you wait so long? I can't answer that. I'm sorry. Let's go from Iran to the 1930s America in the Robert Altman film Kansas City, starring Jennifer Jason Leigh, Miranda Richardson, and Harry Belafonte. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.4 out of 5, an IMDb of 6.3 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes of 59% rotten, and a Metacritic of 58. As for accolades, it was nominated for a Palme d'Or, and it lost to Secrets and Lies that year. So this week, I was really excited to watch all 4 films that I chose for this long crime section. And the one I was most curious about was Kansas City, because it's actually the one I've heard the least about. The other 3 films I am doing have all had critical acclaim. They've gone on to be cult classics, or honestly be considered some of the best films that have been made in the past 30 years. So I was really curious as to what Kansas City was going to be, especially since Robert Altman is a director that I kind of have a big hole when it comes to representation on the types of movies I've seen. And I've got to say, I'm pretty disappointed by Kansas City. First thing is that the central characters in this film are uninteresting and at times incredibly annoying. The 2 main characters, who are played by Miranda Richardson and Jennifer Jason Leigh, I mean, one is a gangster's girlfriend and the other is a dope addict housewife. Neither character are all that compelling and really do much to drive a plot that makes it interesting. Miranda Richardson's character is just completely uninteresting. I could care less about the character. But I am stunned to see how absolutely annoying and bad the performance is by Jennifer Jason Leigh. I've been watching more films the past few years from doing this channel, and I've started to really like Jennifer Jason Leigh and everything I've seen in her in. But this is by far the worst performance I've seen her do. The character that she's playing feels more like a caricature of someone who says, okay, let's do a 1930s, 1940s gangster villain in that type of mold of movie, but make it female, and that's it. Do your best, Jennifer Jason Leigh. And it's actually incredibly annoying and bad. Like, she sounds awful in this movie. And that's completely unlike Jennifer Jason Leigh. Everything I've seen her in, which I'll admit is fairly limited, her performances are great. So I'm actually surprised how I could not stand her character and couldn't stand her in this movie. Like, that's really bad. But others who like this movie like to say that the central plot is really not the most interesting part of the film. It's really kind of like Nashville, kind of like Shortcuts, where it's about the location and the setting and the feeling and the mood and everything surrounding the characters is where most of the story is. And if that's the case, I've got to be honest, the surrounding of political corruption is a little too pointed in this film, and it just kind of feels like window dressing. It doesn't have a lot of depth to it other than, can you see how screwed up everything was back then? Look how crazy everything was back then. And that's really not enough to be compelling, even though I will say, everything in the film looks great. I do like how the setting looks. I like how everything everything is shot. It's just not that compelling. It's just not that interesting. There are some things I think are highlights of the film. I think the jazz performances are easily the most entertaining parts of the film. There's an actual band who is playing in these jazz intermissions between the scenes, and they're a lot of fun, and they're really good. They sound great. Like, the soundtrack of this movie is really good. But I really like Harry Belafonte in this film. I think he's great. I think he's the best part of this film. I would have loved a film just about this character. Just about this character. But you only get so much of him, and it's really not enough. And that's why I feel like Kansas City is a very disappointing watch, because I keep hearing about how brilliant Robert Altman is, and he does some films that are really good. I love Nashville. Nashville's a great movie. But the more and more I start to watch his films, I'm getting more and more disappointed. Maybe I'm watching the wrong films. But Shortcuts had that same kind of cachet where people thought it was a great movie. And I came away going, it's good. It's good. And now I'm watching this, and I'm not enjoying this at all, even though I do see the talent that's there. So overall, I'm going to give Kansas City 1 star out of 5. The central plot is just uninteresting. It is not compelling in the slightest. And it's buoyed by 2 characters who are either annoying or completely uninteresting. And it probably has one of Jennifer Jason Leigh's worst performances. I found her character incredibly annoying and just insufferable to deal with. And what happens at the end didn't feel like an emotional gut punch. It felt like, oh, thank God. And that's not how it's supposed to be. But I will say, as for pluses, the jazz music that's in the movie is great, and Harry Belafonte is also great in the film. So if you want to see a good performance by Harry Belafonte, knock yourself out. Other than that, I don't think it's worth watching. So overall, 1 star out of 5 for Kansas City. Now, let's get to the Letterboxd reviews. Something weird happened with the Letterboxd reviews for this movie, and that's out of my friends list that I have, or my followers list, no one's watched this movie. Nobody has watched this movie. That surprised me. I was like, wow, not even one? So I had to go into the popular reviews for these. So let's start with Benaiah Riley. Benaiah Riley gives it 4.5 stars out of 5, and Benaiah says, Robert Altman, you relentlessly experimental, unfailingly delightful director. There's his penchant for finagling with Hollywood narrative principles like some European auteur from the 60s. There's his love for intricate editing patterns, gallivanting from place to place and between situations. In Kansas City, Altman's magical ability to usher us into the atmosphere of his stories approaches McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And then there's this wonderful character played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, riffing off Jean Harlow. She's such a contrast from every female caricature, normally lets itself imagine, so fiery and dominant, so overflowing with spunky, idiosyncratic personality. This movie delighted me beyond all reason. P.S. Steve Buscemi herding hired voters with a baseball bat for the win. I cannot disagree more with this review, but I will say, in defense with Robert Altman, I do see the talent in this movie. And Benaiah Riley is right. I believe that Altman is doing something much more experimental in the film. It just did not land with me in the slightest. Let's get into the next review. This one is from Neil Shaunis. Neil Shaunis gives it 4 stars out of 5, and Neil says, 3 things that will never make your movie worse: a grumpy Jennifer Jason Leigh with a gun, a loquacious Harry Belafonte as a villain, and dueling saxophones. I agree with 2 of those things, but they didn't make this movie good for me, so oh well. This next review is from Felipe Furtado. Felipe gives it 3 stars out of 5, and Felipe says, this has a more streamlined narrative than most late Altman, while the movie itself seems more driven towards its pure detail and jazz club scenes. That I agree with. I absolutely agree with that. So there is pulp, but no urgency. Absolutely. This movie is at its worst when it tries to mean something, and best when it plays up its ambiance and performances. Again, I absolutely agree. Jennifer Jason Leigh and Harry Belafonte do a lot of the heavy lifting to keep the narrative going, and the jazz musicians do the rest. Altman grew up in Kansas City around the time the movie is set, and he is very invested in the environment. One wishes he could trust it more. So I do agree that a lot of what makes this movie really good is the period detail, the jazz club scenes, the music, stuff like that. I just don't like Jennifer Jason Leigh in this movie, and I genuinely actually like Jennifer Jason Leigh. And this last review is from Colin the Dude. Colin gives it 3 stars out of 5, and Colin says, inconsequential isn't a word I could have previously used to describe an Altman film, because I had always cautiously tiptoed around his lesser praised efforts, yet here is the first one of at least 15 where I could say that this feels completely indifferent to the story he's telling. That's exactly how I feel. There's a lot of jazz in the film, and the whole vibe of its inclusion feels like Altman had a lot of music on set and was jibbing out to the smooth vibes and wasn't all that interested in keeping a driving pace or having interesting turns in the story. That is exactly how I feel. It's just kind of there, and I felt no discernible emotions from once it started to when it was over. Predictably well shot, decent acting, but no passion to it. I think this is the review I agree with most, even though all of them are technically positive because they're upwards from 3 and above. But I see the talent of Altman in this. I just don't see the story. And I think that's where I found it to be so disappointing. So in review, I think the story of Kansas City is its biggest weakness. The central characters itself are uninteresting and annoying. I particularly did not like Jennifer Jason Leigh in this film, but I did like Harry Belafonte. I thought he was great, and the jazz music that is surrounded the film is the highlight, to me at least. I do have to watch more of Altman's films. He's a director that I have a huge hole of, and I'm going to fill some of that this year as well. I have another Altman film that I'm watching later on. Maybe I've watched his wrong movies, but I am becoming less and less impressed by Altman as I watch him. But again, love Nashville, and I did like Shortcuts somewhat, but I'm hoping that one of the films I'm seeing this year is a lot better than what I've seen.
The scene of the crime.
No telling you if there's been a crime, but this country's seen a good number of disagreements over the years.
Finally, we go to Texas in John Sayles' critically acclaimed drama Lone Star, starring Chris Cooper, Chris Christopherson, and Matthew McConaughey. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.9 out of 5, an IMDb of 7.4 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 91% fresh, and a Metacritic of 79. As for accolades, it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay. It's on the Criterion Collection Spine number 1202, and it's featured in the book 1,000 Movies You Must See Before You Die by Stephen J. Schneider. So this film is one that I kind of forgot about for a long time, but I remember episodes of Siskel and Ebert. So when I saw that this was a 1996 film, I was like, I gotta see this because I've heard great things. And yes, it's a great movie. It is such a well-written, multi-layered story. This film starts off with basically a body that is found in the desert, and then it expands and expands as the film goes on, and it just branches up. It kind of reminds me of what The Wire is in a way. Not exactly, but like it kind of just expands as to where the story goes on. It starts with the murder, then it goes to these characters, and then it goes to the characters that the other characters know. It tells this really deep story that I think was just incredibly well done when it comes to the screenplay itself. I think what's surprising about this film is that this film is less about the murder and less about the crime than it's more about racial politics and secrets of a town. Throughout the entire film, I kept thinking something's up here and it's not what it seems. And I kind of figured out what it was in a certain sense. There was a bit of a twist at the end, but I overall got what the film was going for, and I actually really enjoyed the story it was telling. Not only because it layered itself so well, but in how it did it. It did it in a very direct manner, but it did it in a way that was still interesting in a way. As for performances, I think Chris Cooper and Elizabeth Pena are very good in the film. I think Chris Christopherson is fantastic. He's in it for maybe, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes, but whenever he's on screen, he is fantastic. He plays a great villain. He is the best performance in this film, period. Just fantastic. I gotta be honest, though. There are so many plot lines in this film, and like many films that have multiple plot lines, some plot lines are better than others. Now, this is common in these types of films. Think of Magnolia, Shortcuts, Nashville, stuff like that. When it's this type of film, I kind of expect some plot lines to not be as good as the others, but I honestly think some plot lines should have been just cut entirely. I honestly think the plot line involving the army and the colonel was kind of a throwaway. I don't think it was as good as I was expecting it to be. That's like one example. Others are fine, but they don't really match some of the other plot lines in the film. And I think it's because of that. I want to like this movie a lot more than I did. I want to give it a higher score. I want to give it like the max I would give it. Something was just missing in this film. There's a little bit of an oomph. There's a little bit of a spice to it that I think is absent for it to be a truly great movie like that. I still think it's a very, very good movie. I think the screenplay itself is really well done in how they layer everything. It's just missing something. And I think cutting a few of the plot lines and fashioning up the story a little bit better would have really helped it reach that edge. But overall, I really do like this film. I think it is a fantastic story. I think the screenplay is well done, but it just misses that 4.5 for me. So yeah, overall, I'm going to give Lone Star 4 stars out of 5 with a heart. This is very close to a 4.5. But it just misses it. I would give it like a 4.4 if I could, but I think 4 is where I'm going to land on it. I think the story itself is well written. and multi-layered to be a very interesting story. I also like that the film branches out not only with the characters, but what it actually is about. And the performances of this film by Chris Christopherson, Chris Cooper, and Elizabeth Pena are great. Very good performances, especially Chris Christopherson. I just think that there's something missing that just gets it to that 4.5 area. But I gotta be honest, I understand why people loved this film back then. And I'm kind of shocked that it's not as well known now as it was back then. But this is still a very, very good movie. So overall, 4 stars out of 5 with a heart for Lone Star. Let's get to the Letterboxd reviews. This one is from Silent Dawn. Silent Dawn gets it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart. And Silent Dawn says, Lone Star reckons with small town secrets and the buried skeletons of the past, but never devotes itself to being a whodunit in its entirety either. I would say the whodunit part is actually the least important part of the film, to be absolutely honest. John Sayles lingers on the mystery only in the sense of how it reverberates across its epic canvas, how we fail to fully comprehend the evil of America's sins, what's hidden under the dirt beneath our feet. By the end, you feel as if you haven't just explored the characters, but the space and setting. Yes, that is absolutely true. The town is probably the best character in this film. Historical examination that renders its neo-Western structure as a key component of its ambition. If you could single out any performance in this, it's Chris Cooper, who is quietly unassuming and powerfully at the center of a narrative that continues to add layer after layer while still providing a focused sense of storytelling. You know, Chris Cooper does have a very good performance in this film, and I think he is probably the best person as for a lead performance, so I would kind of agree with that. I think Chris Christopherson is a better performance, but Chris Cooper's performance really helps the plot along really well and really nicely, and it's a character that I really liked getting to know throughout the entire film, so I could see where Silent Dawn is getting at with that. Let's get to the next review. This one is from Phoebe. Phoebe gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Phoebe says, this was literally one of the best movies I've ever seen, and I haven't even heard of it until yesterday. I weep thinking about what society would be like if people watched this instead of fucking LA Confidential. I really like LA Confidential, so I don't know what the issue with that is. I like LA Confidential more, but I would probably have this at like a 2 or 3 beneath it. I would say that at very least. I don't know why you don't like LA Confidential, but we'll move on from there. This next review is from Todd. Todd gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Todd says, thoroughly engaging neo-Western with rich characters and nuanced script and great filmmaking techniques. Yeah, the way that the film shifts from the past to the present is actually really good. I really liked how John Sayles did that. The performances help ground what is already a great film. There was something extra special missing that made the ceiling for my rating 4 stars, but this is a film that I would recommend to nearly anyone. Yes, I agree. And I'm shaking myself trying to figure out exactly what it is that it's missing. Because that's the thing that really angers me about this. Because I'm watching this and going, this is really good, but something's not there that should be there, and I can't give it 4.5. I'm with Todd there, but I might just rewatch this before the end of the year just to see how I feel about it. So we'll see. And this last review is from The Shrillest. The Shrillest gives it 3 stars out of 5, and The Shrillest says, I respected it more than I enjoyed it. Also, too many characters. I kind of agree with the too many characters, to be absolutely honest. I mentioned the Army Colonel. I think that was a little too much. I don't think it's that bad, but I kind of understand where The Shrillest is coming from here. So in review, Lone Star is a very good film. It's got a very rich, multi-layered, and deep and well-written story. It's surprising how much the film blossoms from a crime to then something about racial politics to then the secrets of a town. And it does so in an almost effortless way. I think there's some great performances in the film. I think Chris Cooper and Elizabeth Pena are very good, but I think Chris Christopherson is really good in the film. I think he is the best performance. But like I said, in the end, I just think there's something missing in the film that just really ratchets it up to a 4.5 for me. So it gets its 4 stars out of 5, but hey, I might watch it again later, and maybe I'll figure out what it is and whether I want to bump it up to a 4.5 or keep it where it is, so stay tuned for when that happens. Now let's recap the films I reviewed in this episode. I gave 4 stars out of 5 with a heart for The Lives of Others. It's a mix of like a Le Carré novel and a resistance story. I really liked how the film subverts the paranoia thriller in a way by switching perspectives from the person being surveilled to the one that is surveilling the people. When I finished the film, it was a slow burner that really didn't affect me emotionally at the end, but as time went on and I started really thinking about it, I had a deeper appreciation for the film. I gave 4 stars out of 5 with a heart for Lone Star. I think it's just a very well-written, multi-layered story that not only is about a crime, but the racial politics and the secrets of a town. And I think it's incredibly well constructed. It has great performances by Chris Cooper, Elizabeth Pena, and especially Chris Christopherson. But it's just missing something that gives it that 4.5 out of 5. And I think it might be because it has a few too many plot lines. I gave 1 star out of 5 for Robert Altman's Kansas City. I think the central characters are uninteresting or just annoying. I think it also has probably one of the worst performances I've seen from Jennifer Jason Leigh. Everything that's happening outside of the main story just feels like window dressing, and it's a little too pointed. But I have to admit that it does look good. Harry Belafonte has a great performance, and the jazz performances from the band is also really good. And my film of the week is easily A Separation. I love how the film just slowly builds upon itself in its story, and it does so almost effortlessly. It's got a lot of great and thoughtful visual allegories that shows up throughout the entire film, and the characters are so well realized and have such great depth to it. And that's thanks to the screenplay that has a lot of great nuance and depth to these characters. And the ending is just incredibly well done. My film of the week is A Separation. Check it out if you haven't seen it, and odds are if you are watching this, you probably already have. And that is it for this episode of Watch Rate Heart. Before I go, let me ask you a question. What is your least liked film from a favorite director? I'm asking this because I've heard so many great things about Robert Altman, and I'm starting to feel like I'm watching the wrong movies. So I kind of want to ask that question as well. One of my favorite directors is the Coen brothers, or I guess Joel Coen would be the director that usually directs those films. And my least favorite film of his is The Lady Killers. And honestly, I saw that in theaters and was highly disappointed by the film. And to this day, I am still greatly disappointed by it. That's mine. Let me know what yours is in the comments section below. If you liked any of the reviewers I've highlighted in this episode, you can check out the description for a link to their Letterboxd profile, and be sure to give them a follow and let them know that Brad from Watch Rate Heart sent you. You can follow me at Letterboxd and X at Watch Rate Heart. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and share with your friends. I'm Brad from Watch Rate Heart. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all watch and rate movies, but you give them the heart that makes them live forever.